At 2 a.m. the phone rang. A grandson's trembling voice warned, "Grandma, whatever you do, don't wear your red coat today." Hours later, a body was found at her bus stop, wearing a coat identical to hers. A forged deed, a vanished grandson, a daughter-in-law hiding deadly secrets, an abandoned mill, a hidden map, and a truth that could kill. Tonight, survival isn't about strength, it's about instinct and knowing who to trust when your own blood betrays you. Rain whispered against the window like a secret trying to escape. In a dim apartment on the 12th floor, an old rotary phone began to ring. One ring, two, then three. By the fourth, a frail hand reached out and lifted it. "It's always 3 a.m. when the past decides to wake you," she murmured, her voice rough from years of silence. Her name was Sadvi, once known for her calm sermons and gentle grace. Now at 70, she sat alone, staring out at the neon lights smeared by rain. The room smelled of incense and old books. On the wall, a single photograph hung crooked. A young woman laughing beside a man near a frozen lake. "Mrs. Deviani's row." The voice on the phone was young, female, American. "This is Claire from the New York Chronicle. We found something that might belong to you. A photo, dated 1983. Near Hudson Bay, it has your name written on the back." Silence stretched like smoke. Sadvi's wrinkled fingers tightened on the receiver. "That photograph shouldn't exist anymore," she said slowly. "Then maybe that's why it found its way back," the girl replied. Sadvi's eyes shifted toward a wooden box on the table, carved with fading lotus flowers, sealed with dust. Her reflection in the window looked like another person entirely, someone who had lived too long and loved too deeply. "You want to know what happened that summer?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," the voice said softly. "I think people deserve to know." Sadvi smiled faintly, a tired, forgiving smile. "No, my dear. Some truths don't deserve to be told, they demand it." Her voice lowered, turning into a whisper, as if speaking to her own reflection. "I was 23 when I came to America. I thought I was chasing freedom. But freedom, my dear, is a tricky lover. It gives you wings only to teach you how far you can fall." The clock ticked louder. She opened the wooden box. Inside lay a faded photograph and a ring, silver, still glinting under the yellow light. Her hands trembled as she lifted the picture. "It began on a winter morning," she said to no one in particular. "The day I met the man who taught me what love costs when you borrow it from fate." The rain outside grew heavier. The phone line crackled, but Claire said nothing. Only Sadvi's breathing filled the room. Slow, deliberate, broken. "You're still there?" Sadvi asked. "Yes," Claire whispered. "I'm listening." Sadvi closed her eyes, and for the first time in 40 years, the story began to breathe again. The winter of 1983 had a silence that felt alive. Snow fell like whispers on the Hudson streets, covering everything: roads, cars, and maybe even scenes. I had just moved to New York from Chennai with 2 suitcases, a scholarship letter, and too much hope. The city was louder than I'd imagined, but the loneliness was louder still. I remember the morning I met him. I was working part-time at a library near Hudson Bay. The door had jammed from the cold, and I was struggling with it when a voice behind me said, "You're not from around here, are you?" His voice carried warmth that didn't belong to winter. I turned around, tall man, dark coat, a small scar near his lip. His name was Michael. He smiled like someone who had read all the tragedies of the world but still believed in happy endings. For weeks, he came to the library every day, sometimes to read, sometimes just to talk. I laughed again after months. He called me Sunrise because he said I brought light into cold places. But he never told me much about himself, only that he was stuck between choices. One evening, as the snowstorm howled outside, the power went out. The library was empty except for the two of us. He lit a candle, and its small flame danced between us like a secret. I told him I missed home, the smell of rain on Cheney soil, my mother's bangles, my father's laughter. He listened quietly, then whispered, "Sometimes, the home we miss is a person we haven't met yet." His eyes said what his words didn't, and for the first time, I didn't look away. But happiness always travels with a shadow. The next week, I saw a wedding ring on his finger. I didn't ask. He didn't explain. Love, I learned, doesn't need truth to begin, only a heartbeat. We met in secret, in parks where no one looked twice, in silence that said too much. He told me his wife was sick, that he stayed for her because guilt was heavier than love. I wanted to believe him. I did. One night, we sat by Hudson Bay, the water frozen solid, the world around us quiet and cruel. He said, "If things were different, I'd never let you go," I replied. "Then maybe it's good they aren't." He kissed my forehead. It was the kind of moment that hurts, even while it's happening, because you already know it won't last. I didn't see him after that night for months, until the day the police came to the library, asking if I knew a man named Michael Hayes. They said his car was found near the lake, frozen, empty. The snow had started to melt by March, but the chill stayed inside me. Every corner of that library now carried his shadow. The desk where he used to read, the aisle where he brushed my arm, the window where he once whispered my name. I told myself he would come back, that maybe he just needed time. But deep down, I knew something was terribly wrong. A week after the police visit, I received a letter. No name, no return address. Just my first name, Sadvi, written in his handwriting. The envelope smelled faintly of tobacco and winter rain. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Asterisk, forgive me. If they ask, you don't know me? M asterisk. I read it again and again, the ink bleeding from my tears. The words weren't an apology. They were a confession disguised as protection. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the floor, every gust of wind sounded like his voice calling me from somewhere I couldn't reach. I walked out of my apartment and followed the sound of the river. Hudson was silent, except for the ice cracking softly under the moonlight. I imagined his car sinking there, his body trapped under a sheet of frozen glass. Days passed. This time they asked more questions about the nights we met, about the phone calls. They found his wallet near the riverbank, but no sign of him. One officer looked at me a little too long. "You said you only knew him from the library." "Yes," I lied. He tilted his head. "Funny, because his wife says he stopped visiting libraries months ago." I felt my pulse throb in my throat. Maybe she's mistaken. He smiled, that kind of smile that says he doesn't believe you, but he enjoys watching you squirm. After they left, I sat alone on my bed. The mirror across the room caught my reflection. Tired eyes, messy hair. A woman who had learned that love and guilt were the same perfume. By April, the snow was gone. But the rumors weren't. People whispered that Michael ran away with someone. Others said he drowned himself. I stayed quiet. Silence was safer than truth. One evening, I returned to the library to close early. The phone rang. A deep voice, distorted. "You should have told the truth, Sadvi." I stood frozen, the receiver still in my hand, the dial tone buzzing like a distant scream. Outside, the wind rattled the glass panes, and for the first time I felt afraid, not of losing him, but of what I might have already lost inside myself. The letter arrived on a Thursday morning. Gray skies pressed against the window like a warning. I hadn't expected anything from him, or anyone connected to him, ever again. The envelope was thick, unmarked, and heavy with secrets. My fingers shook as I broke the seal. Inside, a single photograph and a folded note. The photograph was of him, Michael, standing on the frozen Hudson, but something was off. He wasn't alone. A shadow of a woman lurked behind him, her face partially hidden, but the posture was familiar. The note was in a handwriting I didn't recognize. You weren't meant to see this yet. It changes everything. C. I dropped the envelope on the kitchen table. My heart raced. Who was C? Was it Claire from the Chronicle? Or someone else? And the woman in the photo, why did her silhouette feel like a ghost of the past, not just another stranger? The next hours blurred. I kept returning to the photo, tracing the figure's outline with a trembling finger. Memories surged, Michael's laugh, the warmth of his hand, the weight of his guilt, and mine. It was as if the world had compressed all my emotions into that single image. By nightfall, I had made a decision. I needed answers. I took the photo, the note, and my coat. The city smelled of wet asphalt and diesel, a scent I had once associated with new beginnings. Now it carried danger. I reached the coffee shop we had once frequented, the one near the Hudson where secrets felt safe. The door chimed, and I slipped inside, scanning the room. No one, just a note left on a table. Asterisk back entrance, midnight, alone, asterisk. I clutched the photograph tighter. My mind screamed to ignore it. But guilt is persistent. Love is relentless, and curiosity. Curiosity is a slow poison that never forgets. I returned home and packed a small bag, flashlight, umbrella, my old journal where I had written about Michael, and a worn scarf. I dressed carefully, choosing my brown coat instead of the red one. I once treasured a color of visibility, of vulnerability, of memory. Midnight approached, and I walked through silent streets, the city breathing around me, the rain slicking the asphalt. Shadows moved in the corners of my eyes. Every step made my heart pound faster, reminding me that some pasts are never dead. When I reached the back alley near the coffee shop, I saw him, not Michael. Someone else, a figure in a hooded coat, holding a lantern. They didn't speak at first, just waited. I raised the photograph. You sent this? I asked. My voice wavered. The figure tilted their head. A whisper carried across the wet cobblestones. You need to remember, Sadvi, the truth doesn't forgive. Not now, not ever. Rain soaked through my coat, cold, but the chill in my chest was stronger. That night, I realized the story I had buried wasn't just about Michael anymore, and about the invisible chains of. The hooded figure stepped closer, the lantern's glow trembling against the brick walls. I tightened my grip on the photograph, the paper already soft from the rain. My breath came out in sharp, uneven bursts. Who are you? I asked again, forcing my voice to hold steady. The figure slowly pulled back the hood. It was a woman, dark-skinned, tall, with streaks of silver in her braids. Her eyes were sharp, knowing, almost too familiar. You don't remember me, she said, but I remember you. My pulse spiked. A memory flickered, a hospital corridor, a winter coat, a pair of watchful eyes in the distance. A moment I had dismissed as coincidence. You were there. The night he. I couldn't finish the sentence. The words felt heavy, like stones on my tongue. She nodded. I saw everything, and you ran. The accusation hit me like a slap. My throat tightened. I didn't run, I whispered. I didn't know what else to do. For a heartbeat, the woman studied me with cold patience. Denial is easier than truth, but truth is why I called you here. She gestured to the end of the alley, where a metal door stood slightly open, a thin strip of warm light leaking through. Inside, you need to see something. Fear coiled around my ribs. I shouldn't have come. I should have burned the letter, thrown the photograph into the river, let the past stay dead. But something stronger than fear pulled me forward. Maybe guilt, maybe love, maybe both. Inside the door was a narrow stairwell leading underground. The walls hummed with the sound of old pipes, and the air smelled of mildew and forgotten secrets. The woman walked ahead, the lantern casting long, wavering shadows. At the bottom was a small room, dusty, cramped, with shelves lined by old boxes. On the table in the center sat a single object wrapped in a cloth. The woman motioned for me to step closer. "Open it," she said quietly. My hands trembled as I pulled the cloth away. Underneath was another photograph, older, worn at the edges. It was Michael, years younger, standing beside a woman who looked almost exactly like the shadowed figure in the photo I received earlier, but this time, her face was visible. She looked like me, younger, softer, unbroken. My breath caught. "What is this?" The woman's voice softened, almost pitying. "He never told you the full truth. He hid things from you, things about her, and about who she was to him." I shook my head. No, that can't be. I would have known. I would have. "You didn't know," she cut in, "because he didn't want you to." I stared at the photograph, and the room seemed to tilt around me. The weight of betrayal pressed down like a slow, suffocating tide. I felt the ground slip beneath my certainty, my memories twisting into questions. The woman stepped closer. "Sadvi, the past you're holding on to isn't the past that really happened. You came here for answers. Now the truth begins." I felt tears, threatening anger, confusion, grief mixing into one unbearable storm. "What do you want from me?" I whispered. She looked at me with eyes full of shadows. "To finish what he started." And in that moment, I realized the story I thought I understood was only a fragment, a doorway into something far darker, far deeper than anything I had braced myself for. The room felt smaller by the second, as if the walls were inching closer with every breath I took. The woman, the stranger who seemed to know pieces of my life I never questioned, watched me with an expression that hovered between sympathy and warning. "Finish what he started," I repeated, my voice barely more than a hoarse whisper. "You're not making sense." She sighed, as though she had expected my confusion, expected the way my mind would fight the shape of her words. "You think love is the whole story," she said. "But love was only the door. What happened afterward? That's where everything broke." She reached into one of the boxes on the shelf and pulled out a thin folder, edges curled from age. She placed it in my hands. The paper was cold, almost damp, as if it had been buried underground for years. "Open it." I didn't want to. Something inside me resisted, the way a body resists stepping into freezing water, but I did it anyway. Inside were documents, letters, and a small envelope stained with a ring of old water damage. The first page was a report, dates, names, places I recognized only in fragments. My eyes scanned the lines faster and faster, until they locked onto one sentence like a blade against the skin. Asterisk, asterisk, subject connected emotionally, but unaware of second identity. Asterisk, asterisk. My stomach dropped. "What is this?" I breathed. "What do you mean, second identity?" The woman leaned against the wall, arms crossed, face half lit by the trembling lantern. "Michael lived 2 lives," she said. 2 names, 2 histories, and to women he promised the same things too. The folder slipped slightly in my grip. A numbness crawled up my arms. "No," I whispered. "He wouldn't." "He did," she said simply. "And you were the one he loved." But she was the one he depended on. For survival, for secrecy, for everything he couldn't tell you. A cold ache spread through my chest, as if a hand had reached inside and slowly tightened around my heart. My voice trembled. "Why are you telling me this now, after all these years?" She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Because she's gone. She vanished without a trace 2 weeks before Michael died. And he left something behind, something that belonged to her, something people would kill for." The hair at the back of my neck lifted. "What did he leave?" She tilted her head toward the table, toward the photograph that had turned my world upside down. "A code," she said, "hidden in the last thing he ever wrote. A message neither of us could decode. But you might." My throat tightened as I looked down at the folder again. "Why me?" "Because he trusted you in ways he didn't trust anyone else." Her voice softened. And because guilt sharpens memory, you remember details you don't even realize you remember. I swallowed hard. What happens if I refuse to help you? The woman blinked just once, slow and deliberate. You won't, because you're here. Because you answered the letter. Because you've been carrying the weight of his death for 20 years and you want the truth, even if it cuts you open. The room went silent except for the soft hum of the pipes behind the walls. Then she added, quietly, and because someone else is looking for that same code, someone who already knows your name. A chill spread down my arms. Her eyes held mine. You're not safe anymore, Sadvi. Not until this is finished. And just like that, the past wasn't memory anymore. It was alive, breathing, and walking toward me. The moment she said I wasn't safe, the lantern flickered, a nervous shiver of light skimming across the walls. For a second, the room dipped into shadow. My fingers tightened around the folder as the old fear. I'd spent years burying Rose like smoke in my throat. Who knows my name? I asked, barely breathing. The woman didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked to the far shelf, lifted a rusted tin box, and placed it gently on the table. The metal scraped against the wood, a sound that made my skin prickle. You'll see, she said. She opened the box. Inside were scraps, newspaper clippings, torn photographs, a small recorder, and something wrapped in thin plastic. She handed it to me. I unfolded the plastic and found a tiny metal key, no bigger than a thumbnail, old, scratched, and worn. What does this open? I whispered. She hesitated. That's what we need to find out. The uncertainty in her voice frightened me more than the truth I'd been chasing. If she didn't know, then how did Michael expect anyone to? I set the key down and looked at her. Tell me who is looking for it. Tell me who else knows. Her eyes softened, but only with regret. Someone who was close to him. Closer than you think. A cold, sharp ache settled behind my ribs. You mean someone from his life? She took a slow breath. But both. My heart stilled. A quiet, heavy pause. Faces from the past flashed through my mind like old film. Reels, friends, colleagues, who had hugged me at the funeral. People who had sworn they had no idea why he died. People who had cried with me. I suddenly felt sick. You're lying, I whispered. This can't be real. Sadvi, she said, her voice low, steady, to calm. You didn't notice because you trusted too easily. You loved too deeply. That's what made you vulnerable. I bristled. I wasn't weak. No, she said. You were human. I looked away. The lantern's glow breaking into soft gold fragments through my tears. The walls felt like they were pressing closer again. A 20-year-old grief had found my throat, choking me. What do they want from me? The same thing we want, she said. The code. Michael's last message. She switched on the old recorder from the box. A soft crackle filled the room. Then a voice broken, faint, a whisper pulled from the edge of breath. Michael. My knees nearly buckled. I hadn't heard his voice in decades. If you're hearing this, I'm sorry. The recording glitched, then returned. They'll come for the key first. Then for her. Protect her, even if she doesn't know who she is yet. The voice cut out again. I froze. Protect who? Who was he talking about? The woman exhaled slowly, as though preparing herself. You. The word hit me like an impact to the chest. What do you mean me? I didn't. He hid things from you, she said softly. Not to deceive you, but to keep you alive. My breath fractured, my pulse hammering. The woman stepped closer, her expression shifting, not pity, not anger, but gravity. Sadvi, she whispered, your connection to him was never an accident. The lantern flickered again, but this time, I felt the darkness differently, not as an ending. As the beginning of a truth I never asked for, but was already inside. The room felt smaller now, as if the truth itself was pressing in from the walls. I tried to speak, but my mouth had dried into silence. My heartbeat was too loud to present a drum echoing inside my ribs. He hid things from me, I finally whispered, afraid of my own voice. What things? The old woman didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into the tin box again and pulled out a folded piece of paper, edges yellowed, ink fading. She laid it on the table between us. This, she said, was found with the recorder. My hands shook as I opened it. It wasn't a letter, not a note, but an asterisk map, asterisk hand-drawn, rushed, broken in places, as if Michael had been writing in fear. Lines, arrows, a warehouse circled, a date scribbled in the corner, a name, partially crossed out, and at the bottom, asterisk, asterisk, if I don't make it, she will. Asterisk, asterisk. My blood turned cold. He wrote this. About me. The woman nodded. He wasn't trying to leave you behind. Sadvi, he was trying to lead you somewhere. But why? The words tore out of me. Why me? Why, after all these years? What does any of this have to do with who I used to be? The woman leaned in, voice low, steady, far calmer than I felt. Because you weren't just someone he loved, she said. You were someone he trusted with his life. I looked away, throat burning. Trust was a word I didn't deserve. Not after the night he died. Not after the guilt I had carried like a stone inside my chest. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing myself to breathe. Rain hammered the old wooden roof above us. A slow leak tapped near my shoulder, like an impatient finger. I felt the storm building outside and inside me. You think I can follow this map? I asked quietly. I couldn't even save him. The woman's gaze softened, but she didn't move to comfort me. Guilt is a heavy coat, child, she said. You've worn it for decades, and it has blinded you to the truth. But guilt doesn't mean you failed. Sometimes it only means you survived. The room felt smaller now, as if the truth itself was pressing in from the walls. I tried to speak, but my mouth had dried into silence. My heartbeat was too loud to present a drum echoing inside my ribs. He hid things from me, I finally whispered, afraid of my own voice. What things? The old woman didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into the tin box again and pulled out a folded piece of paper, yellowed, ink fading. She laid it on the table between us. This, she said, was found with the recorder. My hands shook as I opened it. It wasn't a letter, not a note, but an asterisk, map asterisk, hand-drawn, rushed, broken in places as if Michael had been writing in fear. Lines, arrows, a warehouse circled, a date scribbled in the corner, a name partially crossed out, and at the bottom, asterisk, asterisk, if I don't make it, she will. Asterisk, asterisk. My blood turned cold. He wrote this. About me? The woman nodded. He wasn't trying to leave you behind. Sadvi, he was trying to lead you somewhere. But why? The words tore out of me. Why me? Why, after all these years? What does any of this have to do with who I used to be? The woman leaned in, voice low, steady, far calmer than I felt. Because you weren't just someone he loved, she said. You were someone he trusted with his life. I looked away. Trust was a word I didn't deserve. Not after the night he died. Not after the guilt I had carried like a stone inside my chest. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing myself to breathe. Rain hammered the old wooden roof above us. A slow leak tapped near my shoulder, like an impatient finger. I felt the storm building outside, and inside me. You think I can follow this map? I asked quietly. I couldn't even save him. The woman's gaze softened, but she didn't move to comfort me. Guilt is a heavy coat, child, she said. You've worn it for decades. But guilt doesn't mean you failed. Sometimes it only means you survived. Her words cracked something deep inside me. And now, she continued, survival is not enough. She took the map from my hand, tapped her finger on the crossed-out name. This, she said, is the person who knows about the key. Who is it? My voice was barely sound, a beat, a breath, a truth she had been holding back. A woman named Lior. I felt the name hit me like a blow. A shadow from the past, a friend, a rival, a woman who once stood too close to Michael, closer than she ever admitted. A woman who hated me quietly, beautifully, politely. I swallowed hard. Leora, she was at the funeral. She hugged me. She cried. Yes, the old woman said, and she lied. My fingers went numb. My stomach twisted into a knot of memory and betrayal. She's after the key, the woman continued, because she thinks it will lead her to what he was hiding. What was he hiding? The old woman closed the tin box with a slow, final click. That, she said, is what we must find out. But you have something she doesn't. What? You were the only one he loved enough to protect. Her words hung in the air like smoke, heavy. Before I could respond, something outside made us both freeze. A crunch, gravel, footsteps, slow, intentional, too close to be a stranger passing by. The woman's eyes sharpened. She blew out the lantern instantly, plunging the room into darkness. My breath caught. Don't move, she whispered. I could hear the footsteps outside the door now, deliberate, searching, almost patient. My pulse hammered against my throat. The woman leaned close enough that I could feel her breath warm against my ear. They found us. A chill climbed my spine, cold and merciless. And for the first time, I understood. The story Michael left behind wasn't something I was reading. It was something I was trapped inside. I could hear the river long before I saw him. That deep, rolling sound like something old and wounded breathing in the dark. The abandoned mill rose ahead of me, black and broken, its windows like empty eye sockets. Snow crunched under my boots as I moved closer, my flashlight shaking in my hand. Somewhere inside those shadows, my grandson was waiting, or someone pretending to be him. Jelani, I whispered, my breath hanging in the cold air. No answer, only the river swelling below. Then I saw a shape step out from behind a cracked pillar, tall, thin, shoulders trembling. Grandma. His voice was hoarse, like someone had squeezed the life out of it. I ran to him, held his face in both hands. He looked pale, scared, older than 19. What did they do to you? I whispered. He swallowed hard. I didn't know, Grandma. I swear. I didn't know they were going to hurt her. I just thought Naima needed a signature. I thought she wanted to help you, not take everything. The truth hit him like a falling beam and he broke down, shoulders shaking. I wrapped my arms around him, even though my heart was pounding with fear. Blood can disappoint you, but it can also return home broken, crawling, begging to be forgiven. But then another sound, gravel shifting, slow footsteps. My flashlight skimmed across the snow, revealing the woman I dreaded most, Naima, standing just inside the warped doorway, gloved hands folded, face calm to calm for a midnight meeting in an abandoned mill. So, she said softly, you actually came. Her voice was ice. She stepped forward, and the moonlight caught something metallic in her coat pocket. I felt Jelani stiffen beside me. You almost ruined everything, she continued. You were never supposed to leave that house this morning. Renata put on your coat so it wouldn't be traced. She was paid. She understood the plan. But your intuition, she sneered, interfered. You forged my deed, I said quietly. I perfected your life, she corrected. You raised your son poorly. You clung to that old house like it was holy ground. I tried to build a future for us, for him, for everyone. But you refused to move. So I moved everything for you. Her hand slid into her pocket. Jelani stepped in front of me. Don't, he whispered to her. Please, don't do this. Let her go. Move, Jelani, she ordered. You don't know what you're choosing. Yes, I do, he said, and his voice cracked, but it didn't break. The silence stretched, sharp as glass, and then from behind the old rafters, County Police, hands where we can see them. Flashlights exploded across the mill walls. The entire world brightened with white beams. Malik's voice thundered, echoing through the metal frames. Naima froze. For the first time, fear widened her eyes. She tried to turn too late. Officers closed in. Her hands were pulled behind her back. She didn't scream, didn't plead. She only stared at me with a coldness I recognize now as pure emptiness. As they dragged her past me, she whispered, "You were supposed to die at that bus stop." I didn't answer. The truth didn't need my voice anymore. Malik came forward, breath puffing in the cold. "We traced your phone," he said to Jelani. "The message was real. You were smart to send it. And you," he turned to me, "were smarter to come the long way." My legs finally gave out, and I held on to a rusted beam for balance. Jelani caught my hand. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I looked at him, truly looked, broken, guilty, ashamed, but alive, and still my grandson. "We go home," I said softly. The river roared below us, the mill moaned, and snow kept falling like the world was trying to bury what happened here. But I walked out with my head high, a boy saved beside me, and the cold night behind us. Some stories don't end with peace, but with survival, and tonight that was enough.